Okay, good afternoon, everyone. And by the way, I have to use the mic. He makes me. Okay, so it's not my fault. He's making me use the mic. So we'll get through it. Um, First, welcome. Hopefully, you'll relax a little bit. We'll be able to learn a few things together. How many of you have heard this term Mendomi used before? Yeah, quite a few. Good, good. Well, you can help. You can help and provide some comments and feedback to help everybody else in the room understand as well. But that's what we're going to look at. First, let me introduce myself. My name's Art Prather. I've currently work as a manager of regional talent development in the North American Production Support Center. NAPSC are the people manufacturing development experts for Toyota. So that's where I work out of. I've worked at Toyota. Your eyes aren't deceiving you, if you can read that. It's been almost 32 years. I started as a production team member, the 900th person hired at TMMK, working on the chassis line there, and then I was a production team leader for a time and then went into human resources. Most of my time has been spent in human resources on development, training and development. And so that's kind of what led me to NAPSC. And one other thing is that I'm also helping a lot with supplier support. So connecting with Bama is a good thing. Fits right in, right? Okay, let's get off me and let's start to talk about Mendomi. What is Mendomi? And some of you said you've heard it. Does anybody speak Japanese, by the way? You never know. I always ask. Well, here's what I believe. I believe that even though if Mendomi is a new term to you, I believe you've probably shown Mendomi to other people, and I believe you've probably had Mendomi shown to you. I had it when I first started as a production team member that April of 1988. I walked into TMMK and I met a man. His name was John Beats. John Beats was 6'9" tall. I don't look up to a lot of people. I had to look up to John. He was from Wisconsin. He was a cheesehead. You got any cheeseheads in here? You know, a rube like me from Somerset, Kentucky didn't fit real good with cheeseheads. I mean, I didn't see any kind of connections there. He thought Wisconsin basketball was good. That should tell you something about a Kentuckian. I mean, there's no way I was going to buy into that. But John literally, he went out of his way to spend a lot of time with me to show me how to hold the air tool, how to roll the bolts in my hand, how to shoot them appropriately into that bumper, that steel reinforcement, how to assemble that bumper. He spent a lot of time showing Mendomi to me. I always felt that John was there for me. He was more focused on my success, my being able to do the job well, than his own job. He often would, it didn't mean he didn't do his job well, he did, but he would sacrifice himself to be sure that I was supported. And that's at its heart, that's Mendomi. We talk about Mendomi, we're always going to talk about it at the leadership level. So in other words, we don't teach Mendomi to team members and team leaders. We hope those practices exist, and oftentimes they do, but we're focused on training leadership, first line supervisors, assistant managers, managers in the practice of Mendomi. Excuse me. That's who we're going to target. So when we think about what is Mendomi, it's taking care of someone, like the example I gave you, their development, care, and nurturing. It creates a lively workplace. Lively workplace. Did you leave a lively workplace? I've got to admit, right now you're not really a lively group. Now I'm hopeful it's going to change. But how do you know if you have a lively workplace? Are people singing? Show tunes? What does a lively workplace look like? What do you think? An engaged workplace. You can tell when you're in an engaged workplace, right? People care about the work they do. They're contributing. They're making suggestions. They're doing their best work. They're taking care of each other. That's a lively workplace. You know that. You know when you are in a lively workplace and when you're not. I'm going to pull out to Chick-fil-A. You know, obviously I eat too much Chick-fil-A. But when I drive through the drive-through window and they say, Mr. Prather, here's your order. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, Mr. Prather. Now, I've given him my name. I'm too dumb to remember that, okay, I gave him my name. That's how they know it. But it feels so good. You go to other fast food restaurants, you get that? You're a number, Okay, here, take this. It's a difference in a lively workplace. You can feel it, and it's really about Mendomi. When you feel that someone is showing you, is concerned about your care and your development, your nurturing, what won't you do for them? What won't you do for them if you feel that your supervisor has your best interest at heart? It doesn't mean that they're taking less or having less expectations for your performance or what needs to be done, or that they're not coaching you to improve your performance, but they have your best in their minds when they do it. They want you to be successful. So we'll talk more about these workplace. Now, in the Japanese culture, it's much more normal for them to be concerned about the group and their place within the group. In the United States, what do we have? Do we have people that are individuals? We got that, old school John Wayne mentality, individuals, individualistic. One of the examples I was told about Mendomi is that a TMC group leader on the first day of a team member's hire will meet that team member at their house, will ride with them in their car so that they can show them the best way to get to work, the best way to get into work, the best way to get to their workplace. That's how far they'll go to show Mendomi to that new hire. Now, we're not advocating that here in North America. There's a whole lot of legal things with that, I think, but that's how far they'll go. So there's a difference in the cultural background. So there's some things we can learn from that. When we think about the practice of Mendomi, I do need to take just a minute to connect it to the Toyota Way. Hopefully at some point you've seen the Toyota Way. I always indicate that it's made up of two pillars, and normally I visualize the pillars, but I got a mic in my hand. Two pillars. It's important to see the pillars, because can one pillar be higher than the other? Can one be stronger than the other? They have to be equal height, equal strength. And that's the case with continuous improvement and respect for people. Continuous improvement, how we manage our work; respect for people, how we manage our people. And you see those values up here. For continuous improvement, those three values: challenge, kaizen, genchi genbutsu. Genchi genbutsu, basically go look, go see. Go and see, get your boots on, however you would hear it referred to. And those are a big part of our company's culture, and they help lead to why Mendomi is so important. When you think about the challenge, at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, I think it was 2016, Mr. Akio Toyoda gave a speech, and he basically said that Toyota was no longer an automobile manufacturer. That wasn't our primary purpose. What did he say? Mobility. He said, we're a mobility company. I remember listening to him say that, and I thought, well, what does that mean? He set a spirit of challenge, just like the spirit of challenge that Kiichiro Toyota set for the company when he moved it from the loom industry to the automobile manufacturer. He set a spirit of challenge. That spirit of challenge exists today in everything we do. Kaizen, there's only better. There's no best. When you think of Kaizen, you think of a stair step, right? The stair step, you make an improvement, you take a step up, you standardize so you maintain the gain, then you take another step up. Incrementally, you continue to work up. Kaizen, we say, is just equally important to innovation. Innovation, think of it like an escalator. You get on the escalator and it takes you however many floors up. The two have to work together. With Kaizen, we would say that if you don't have standards in place, you're really not in a position to do a Kaizen if the standards aren't clear. Think about it in your own life. I'll talk about me. Over my lifetime, I've probably gained and lost at least 2,000 pounds. I'm thinking it's at least that much. And when I look back and I think, why didn't I ever maintain those gains? Or, well, I could maintain the gain. The gain wasn't the problem. Why didn't I maintain after I had lost? It's because I didn't have any process in place. I had not put any standards in place. And so quickly I lost the improvement I had made, and I was back at ground zero. It's the same for your workplace. So Kaizen, the third one there, third value, Genchi Genbutsu, go and see. Going and seeing for yourself is critical. Not trusting a database, not trusting a form, not trusting hearsay, but to go and see for yourself. In the 90s, there was a member of the Toyota family that was visiting a dealership. Now, at the time, we had probably about 1,200 dealerships in the United States. And you can imagine if you had a member of the Toyota family come in to visit, that's a once-in-a-lifetime event. So the dealership had spit-polished everything. They had developed an agenda, a tour. They'd practiced. And so when this member came, and of course executives don't travel alone, they've got a posse. They were going through the tour, and when they got into the high bay area, one of our vehicles was up on a lift, and the transmission was lowered from it. And it was draining transmission fluid. So Mr. Toyota left the tour, went over and talked to the technician, and in a moment they see him take his jacket off, roll his white shirt sleeve up, grab a handkerchief out of his pocket, and he plunges his hand into the transmission fluid to grab some of the shavings at the bottom of that container. He balls up the handkerchief, he takes it back, and he said, "Please send this to our engineers in Japan so they can better problem solve." Genchi Genbutsu, go and see for yourself with your own eyes. A critical value for our company. And it's critical for Mendomi as well. We'll connect that in just a minute. When you think about respect, a lot of my time has been spent in human resources, human resource management. And you can get the false impression that respect is a warm, fuzzy thing that we show to people. You know, we make them feel better. Their endorphins hit, I don't know, however you want to define it. But in reality, one of the biggest ways you show respect to others is to provide them value-added work. One of the greatest ways I show respect to you is to provide you value-added work. Have you been in a job before that you didn't feel was value-added? That you didn't feel it served a purpose? That it wasn't important? How did it make you feel about yourself? How did that make you feel about the company? One of the greatest ways we show respect to other people is to provide them value-added work. That's why it fits into Kaizen so importantly, right? You're always seeking better. You're always eliminating waste. You're adding more value-add work into the process. You're showing respect to the individual by doing that. And then finally, teamwork. What I'd say about teamwork is there's a certain level of humility that's required. You have to have humility to work within Toyota. And as an example, just from advice from me, this is just from Art Prather. If you've ever had someone represent themselves as a lean manufacturing expert and try to do business with you, I would encourage you to run away. I work with people all the time that have implemented TPS in our shops for years upon years, with TMC coordinators that have done it their entire lives. They would never refer to themselves as an expert. They're learners. And so there's a certain humility that's required. And the same thing with Mendomi. If you don't have a humility, then you're too focused on yourself. You're not willing to show care and nurturing to others. So the Toyota way is important for the practice of Mendomi, all these different values. Now, we've talked a little about Mendomi. Before we go much further, I want to give you an exercise to do. And it hits around your mindset for Mendomi. I'm going to give you a handout in just a moment, and I'd like for you to read over the little bit of information that's on the sheet, and then at the bottom of it, write out in a sentence or two, what is your Mendomi mindset? When it comes to the people that report to you, or when it comes to the leadership in your organization, what is your Mendomi mindset? So I'm going to pass this out, give you a few minutes to write on it, then I'll connect you so you can talk about what you've written, and then we'll see I'll listen to a few groups and see what you've written, what you've talked about, okay? Fair enough. I'll come around, put this mic down, thankfully. Okay, sorry about this. I need to cut you off. I'm sorry. Get you started, revved up. Have to bring us back to focus. So as you do that, let me ask you, is there one group, a couple of groups that'd be willing to share some of the things they discussed, some of the key points? Come on, the mic won't bite, I promise. One or two groups be willing to share just a couple of the things that you talked about? Thank you.
Yeah, so our group sort of has some commonality, talking about having sort of that best friend at work, that familial relationship. But maybe in a training, I mentioned the Gallup Q12 about do you have a best friend at work? So that kind of resonated with me, but it was kind of a common theme amongst this group.
Good. Good. Thanks. What about one other group? Thank you.
I think our group mainly said is listening to our team members, right? So if you have high turnover and if they do come to work for 90 days, ask what they liked, what they disliked, and then change maybe your onboarding process in order to continue to attract good team members.
Yeah, good one. Great. Just as a quick example, how many of you have done or do standardized work audits in your facilities? Pretty much everybody, right? Well, is there a difference? How many of you worked on an assembly line? Yeah, I did. So is there a difference if you have someone come with a clipboard and a stopwatch and they stand back and watch you versus someone come out and say, hi, Art, how's your job going? What's working? What are your struggle points? What can be done to make this process better? Okay, well, I'm going to observe you for a while back here. Just that little step is an act of Mendomi, right? So, good. Anyone else? Okay, well, let me move us on. There are a couple of necessary preconditions, and you may think, when you hear these, you may think they're so elemental. But what I would encourage you with is that in my 32 years, I don't see these practiced regularly. And because of that, I want to encourage that you take some actions to practice these that help make Mendomi possible. The first one is monitor the workplace. Now, in our facilities, our first-line supervisors are constantly challenged with having enough time to be in their own workplace. They're pulled this way and that, and even at the start of shift, it's hard for them to be in the workplace. It's a challenge. But the reality is, for a leadership person, someone with direct reports to show Mendomi, they have to not just monitor the workplace, but be in the workplace. They have to be able to, have times when they're accessible for people to come see them. So that's a big precondition. You have to be able to be in the workplace, monitor the workplace. Doesn't mean all the time. Maybe it's a set time, pre-shift, at lunch, whenever. But you have to monitor the workplace. The second one, and this one you're really going to think is just out there because it's so simple, is your leadership team needs to, on a daily basis, say hello to their direct reports. Call them by name. Hello, Art. Now you may be, what do you think? Pretty simple, right? You're thinking, why did they pay him to do that? I knew that. Well, here's the reality of it. I've taught about the importance of a supervisor recognizing the direct reports by saying hello, acknowledging them on a daily basis. I've talked about this within Toyota for 30 years. I've talked about the importance of it. I've tried to practice it myself to lead by example, and I still don't see it practiced regularly. So I think there's an issue. And here's where it can maybe come in. Are any of you type A personalities? And you'll know that if you've ever torn up a game board. If you've ever gotten really upset with your child when they start to beat you in basketball. You tripped them because they were getting ahead. If you tripped your own child to get a basketball so you could score and they couldn't, you're a type A personality. I know that when you hear, if that's your personality, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great personality to have, especially in the job you're in. But when you hear someone up here say, you need to say hello to your people on a daily basis, look them in the eye and say hello, you can think, well, that's stupid. I've got a lot more important things to do. No, you don't. You're not building anything. They're assembling it. It's critical to let them know that you acknowledge them, you value that they're there. It gives them an opportunity. It lets them know that you're accessible. And you need to do this even with the people that don't react well. When I was human resource manager in the parts center over here, I had a person that I would say hello to, and they would just absolutely ignore me. Now, normally, what does that do? Normally you think, well, they don't want to say hello to me. I'll just leave them alone. I'll avoid them. No, I kept saying hello. I said hello. It went on for months upon months. And I thought, well, there's no way anything's ever going to come of this. But I kept doing it because I knew it was the right thing to do. And then one day, guess what? They showed up at my door. And they said, I need to talk to you. And yeah, they did. It was important that they talked to me. And part of it was made possible because I had opened the door to them. I didn't let their behavior influence mine. I did what I knew was right. That's a precondition for Mendomi. Something that simple. If you can get your team to do that, and you start with yourself, if you could get your team to do that, you'll open the door to Mendomi practices. So let's look a little further at the Mendomi model that we use. We have 3 steps to it. The first step, you're brought together by chance. You can think about this in terms of being brought together with a new hire, someone new to your group. All of a sudden, that person's there, and that's why I appreciate it. Was it Maria? Or Marion, sorry. Marion, I appreciate your comment. You know, developing a process to welcome new people. Not only full-time employees, but what about your contingents? You know, how do you welcome them? How do you orient them to the group? You know, you're brought together by chance. In this case, you're going to observe and sense others. What are their needs? The next step, after a time, you begin to know each other better, and now you're able to anticipate their needs. What do they need from you? And then finally, bonds of trust develop, and you can make people happy to work. Uh-oh, there's a word there that's kind of tough, that happy word. Do you think that's even possible? Do you think it's possible to make people happy to work? To be at work? I'll tell you that I fought this word forever. The TMC vice president that mentored the development of this curriculum, he wanted to use the word happy. And I've got to be honest, after 5 years as an HR manager, I was a little cynical. It happens. So I tried to put every other phrase in here. I tried to talk around it. But over time, I began to see that it was really possible. That was how it was interpreted from TMC. They wanted their people to be happy to be at work. And then I had to understand that it wasn't like well-adjusted happy in life. It was happy at work. Well, what does happy at work mean? What do you think? What does happy at work mean? If people are happy at work, what do you see? Engagement. You see them meet your expectations. They follow the guidelines. They wear the PPE they're supposed to. They're giving suggestions. They're making repairs. They're looking out for each other. So, yeah, I think it is possible to make people happy at work. So those are the phases. Let's take a little closer look at each one of them. When you're brought together by chance, there's a couple of focus areas. The first one is to show an interest in the team member individually. Now, this sounds like it's easy, but it's actually not. I'm going to tell you something now that's going to make you think a lot less of me. And I apologize in advance, but I am a Raiders fan. Yeah, it's been a long time, but a long time for a Raiders fan and a long time for them to win. I know. If you're a Raiders fan, guess what? I can talk to you pretty easily. I'm a fisherman. Guess what? If you fish, we can talk about that. That's true. I play golf. Are you a golfer? I share a lot with that. It's easy to come in, to build a relationship with someone that shares my similar interest. But what about the people that don't? What are you doing to share time with them? How are you coming in contact with them? So as a leader, you have to ask yourself that. How often am I coming in contact with the people how long has it been since I talked to Art? How long has it been since I talked to this person? And if you don't share the same interest, there can be no ill intent, but it can send a strong message and things can just happen over time. Now, I'm an old fogey now. Now, I used to hear my dad talk about things, and I would think, boy, you are so old. Now I say those things, except it's changed, the content's changed. So social media. I have never been on social media. I never plan to be on social media. You've got FaceChat, Instabook, whatever you got, I don't know. But what about the person in my group that they love that they live for that's part of a big part of who they are? How do I come in contact with them? Am I having a discussion with them regularly, or am I just saying, that's Art, he's kind of weird. He's posting everything out there. I'm afraid he'll post something about me. I don't know. But that's the point here, is when you first come in contact with someone, when you're brought together by chance, show an interest in everyone, not just the people that it's easy to. Observe the team members and give them those, those constructive points to help them get better at their job. So that's that first step. Now, as an example, when I first became a team leader, we were at TMMK, there were 800 people that applied to be team leaders, and there were only about 200 that were promoted. So when we got promoted, everyone that was promoted, we were sky high. That was a big accomplishment. At our first night on the job, we were working for a new group leader. Someone had been promoted and brought in from another part of the assembly shop. And we were just absolutely focused. We wanted to show Toyota they'd made a good decision. We wanted to do our best job. And toward the end of that first night, the group leader called a meeting for all the team leaders and him to meet and talk. And we thought, okay, this is it. He's going to give us his vision, and we're going to carry it out. We're going to do it. We're going to do it good. And he brought us together to talk. And as we sat around and talked, he began to talk about garden gnomes. He spent 20 minutes talking about garden gnomes, how he thought that they played together when no one else was around, how he would appreciate getting a garden gnome as a present if we just happened to ever want to give him a present. Garden gnomes. What do you think he was doing? He was showing us, first off, he picked up on how intense we were. And he knew we could build the cars. He knew we could do the work. But he didn't want us to lose sight of the whole person. And once he was willing to spend 20 minutes talking to us about garden gnomes, we felt we could go to him and talk to him about anything. He understood when we were brought together by chance like that, he opened the door for us to be able to be willing to come talk to him about anything. Some examples of this first step. Again, I'll never get off this till the last day I work before I retire. I'll be talking to people about the importance of greeting their team members daily. As Marion said, have a method to welcome someone into the group. Maybe assign them a buddy. And this goes beyond your full-time employees to your contingents as well. Your customers don't care who built the product, your full-time employee or contingent. They just want a good product. Your contingents represent you as much as your full-time employees. So how are they welcomed? How are they brought in? I worked with one company some time ago now, and they literally gotten to the point where they just numbered their contingents. They didn't refer to them by name. They referred to them by a number. How dehumanizing. So have a method for welcoming people in. Notice when they begin behaving differently. Initiate those conversations with people that don't share the same likes as you do. And when observing people, provide them that feedback on how they can do better. Okay? For the second step, when you're anticipating their needs, you're getting to know them better. Here you are at a time when you can adjust your approach based upon what their needs are, how you communicate to them. And you're going to work with their strengths and development areas, but there are a lot of their strengths, focus on their strengths to help them be successful. As an example, I was making a move. I had been an HR generalist at TMMK for 3 or 4 years, and I wanted to make a move into training and development. And I was talking to a lady that had been a college professor, very talented. And at the time I was talking to her, we didn't have cell phones. We had pagers. You didn't have a whole lot of what we have today. And I was sitting at her desk, and all of a sudden her phone started to ring. I don't know if you're like me, but I have a Pavlovian response to a phone ringing. It's like, shut it up, get it off, turn it off, answer it. But she didn't move. She just kept talking to me. And her phone kept ringing. And it kept ringing. Until finally I said, Joyce, don't you want to get that? And she said, no, you're more important. Whoa. Hadn't heard that. And I'll tell you, for her understanding the importance of our conversation and putting the value on it, to bypass the immediate, seeing the immediate as urgent, but to bypass and to do what she knew was right, made all the difference. I ended up working for her for several years, and I'll tell you, she always got my best work. I never cheated her. She got my best because she had given me her best. She had adjusted her approach so that we could connect. So that's that second level when you start to anticipate what the needs are. Here you're going to show concern for team members' personal matters. You're going to see them more as just a piece of, connected to the process. You're going to see them as a human being. You need to be consistently available to them so they can come to you and talk. You'll consider food preferences. And I think this last one's a big one. It's much more than just 5S. First off, the Toyota Way itself, and in Mendomi practices, you have to believe this. You have to believe that people want to do their best. That most people, given the opportunity, will do their best work if they understand what's expected of them. Now, again, I worked as a human resource manager in the parts center where there's about 500 people. There were 15 people over there that I knew their names really, really, really well. I really didn't want to know their names well, but I knew their names really, really, really well. But what about the 485? Those are people that were coming to work every day that wanted to do their best, and as long as they understood what was expected of them, they did their very best. So when you're designing work or when you're setting up your work, make sure that your expectations are clear. If you believe that people want to do their best, once they understand the expectations that you have for them, then start to ask yourself, how well have I done defining and communicating those expectations? So that's just a way to look back at this step. Finally, the bonds of trust. When the bonds of trust begin to be developed, here it's important to be able to provide honest feedback, be willing to say no. If somebody wants to take on an assignment that you don't think they're ready for, maybe you have to tell them no. Share knowledge and skills and assign work that keeps the member growing. I'm almost 32 years in, I'm still getting very challenging assignments. And that'll be the case until I actually leave the company. I'll continue to get those challenging assignments. For bonds of trust, normally you don't know me other than today. Most of you haven't met me. Some of you have, but most haven't. But I've come through human resources, spent 25 plus years in human resources. And as you would expect, as a supervisor, I've usually cut it right down the center. I've never varied one way or another. I've been very conservative in how I try to lead other people, how I try to supervise them. Well, recently, I got somebody as a direct report, and then when they came into the group, the very first time I met them, when I said, hello, we were just talking, I said, well, what kind of work do you like to do? And they said, well, I'll do whatever work you force me to. Something every supervisor wants to hear. And what I found out over time, they sent me a text, and it was kind of a smart alecky response to a text I'd sent them, and they were trying to be funny. I didn't respond. We talked about it the next day, and they said, well, I was afraid you didn't have a sense of humor. So I started to realize that this person is different. But they are talented. They want to do a good job. But they're going to come across like this, and they really want a supervisor that behaves differently with them. And so I began to open up a little bit and treat them a little different, kid with them, joke, and be very direct in my feedback to them. So one day we're in a conference room, and they're reviewing some work they've done. And my boss is in there, which is this person's boss, and there's a peer in there. and they put something up on the screen, and we're talking about it. Later I look at it, and I tell them that what they've put up there is amateurish. Sounds kind of demeaning, doesn't it? I wouldn't have used that phrase with anybody else prior to that. I mean, amateurish. But in this case, because we had developed the relationship, because bonds of trust existed, they didn't take it bad. They wanted it that straight. They had told me they wanted it that straight. And so afterwards, they made the change, they got the point, and everything was fine. It was something I never would have done, and I wouldn't do it with a lot of other people I have, but because we had worked so hard on the relationship, I understood how they wanted to be supervised versus the others. Some examples here. You know, when a team member has a problem, let them fully explain the problem to you, even though you may already know the solution. You have a lot of experience in this room, so you may know the solution, but it's a high form of respect to let them clearly state their point to you. Share your experience with the team member to help them make better judgment calls. Be willing to apologize if you make a mistake. Be approachable. And then this last one's a big one. Eliminate other sources before blaming the team member. Have you ever done cause analysis and your root cause was team member didn't follow standardized work? Who are you blaming? The team member. You know, part of the Toyota Way says that we never do 5 whys to root blame. We never blame an individual. So look further, look at the process to find where the issue's coming. Be sure that you've eliminated all the other issues or reasons for why somebody didn't do something before you blame the individual. With Mendomi, there are many colors to it. There's many different ways to show it, but it's important that you be authentic and sincere. There's no standardized work for Mendomi. That can drive you crazy. Especially if you're very quantitative, you're used to being very quantitative in all your work, there's no real KPI for Mendomi. You could argue about an engagement survey. I could argue against it. There's no real KPI for Mendomi. Oops. What we know are leaders that are good at it accept feedback, even when it's critical. And they have a mindset that they want that person to be better than them. They want the person that you're leading to be better than they were. Okay? So that's just a little bit about Mendomi. What questions do you have or comments?
How do you encourage this with, let's say, someone that's in a position far above where you're located at? You can kind of see the exact opposite going on. How can you broach that subject or at least try to make the culture shift upwards for Mendomi?
So trying to influence someone that's higher in the hierarchy,
Yes.
further up in the hierarchy than you. The first, that's a hard one. It always is going to be. And you only have so much, so you're going to have to use influence. So how do you influence anyone? Well, the first way I do it is I try to lead by example. That's the way I try to lead my kids. So if I, wanted them to behave a certain way, if I wanted them to say hello and they weren't doing it, I would always make it a practice to say hello to them, even though I knew if they didn't value it. If you have a trusting relationship, you can have a conversation with someone, but I wouldn't, you do have to use some judgment about that. Are there other things that people would offer to help with this issue when you're trying to influence people that are higher up in the organization to practice Mendomi? Any thoughts? Show the results. Yeah. Show the results, yeah.
The other thing you can do, every manager has some gaps. If the associate notices that, it's better for to fulfill that gaps will help the
Okay.
manager so that will build up a relationship.
Okay. So help with address the gaps that are visible.
Not addressing,
Just
fulfilling.
just fulfilling. Oh, okay, good. Fulfill the gaps. Good. Yes. I mean, with Mendomi practices, there are some things that you may think, well, I shouldn't have to do that. I shouldn't have to show the person how to do the expense report. I shouldn't have to show them this. I shouldn't have to do that. Okay, but can you? Because it may be what that person needs. What else? What other questions or comments? Yes. Yeah, that is really difficult because the reality is that we need to come into contact with each other. We need to create a proximity with the people we're trying to show Mendomi to. And when you have remote managers that are going over, I mean, literally the best way is that for them periodically to come in contact with them. You know, not to take away from the importance of periodically taking that trip to go see this person, build it into their schedule. That's the first thing. They have to create a proximity. And then beyond that is just create those constant times when they can come in contact with that individual, you know, through phone calls, FaceTime, whatever it is. But I wouldn't devalue, I know it's a budget item, but I wouldn't devalue the importance of getting on a plane and going to see them once a year, once every 6 months, whatever it is. Good questions, good comments. What else? Yes. To show to that individual, yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, the only way you can do it is still by showing concern for the individual. So I had a person that understood what it was like to work in a company that had high expectations for attendance. Yet when they came into our facility, they started to miss a lot. So at some point, I pulled them in and I said, you know what? Because I had worked with them. Basically what it was, a person had worked in manufacturing in Georgetown and they came to the parts center. And they started having attendance problems at the parts center. And I pulled them into a room and I talked to them and I said, you know, I know that you understand the expectations for high attendance, but boy, you've really struggled to meet them lately. And I don't want this to become an issue for you. And I meant it. I wasn't there to hurt them. I wasn't there to judge them. I was just saying we have high expectations and I don't want this to be a problem for you because I know how much you value your job. And we had a discussion. Now, I don't think she probably had a little bit in the back of her mind about me after that, but I never raised my voice. I was never condemning of her. I was just like, I want to help you. I don't want this to be a problem for you. And so I think that's the difference. You know, like when you think about, and this is just strict from HR, when you think about workplace violence issues, and I don't take you to a real serious place here, but one of the greatest ways to prevent workplace violence is just that if everybody that you're dealing with feels like you have their best interests at heart, even if you have to separate them, you're in a better position. I've had people I've had to separate that have then put me on as a reference. It's the strangest thing I ever got. You know, we had to separate this person. 6 months later, I get a call for a recommendation on them. You know, it's not a vindictive action. It's just, well, look at us. Here we are. Here's what you did. It's indisputable. Here's the policy. I've got to take action. I wish I didn't have to, but gosh, I don't have a choice. Keeping it in those terms to where it's not seen as like a vindictive thing. And it's very hard to do. Very hard. Okay? So again, if you want to walk out of here and improve Mendomi practices at your facility, what do you think I would encourage you to do? Say hello. Oh, if you do that, I'd be so happy. Thank you all so much for your time.